This episode is brought to you by the Your Next Chapter Business Club. It provides community, resources, coaching, and training for women in business. In fact, everything you need so you can confidently grow you and your business each and every month. The club is now open and I would love to welcome you in. You can find out more details at angelarasmus.com/club. Inspiration, clarity, confidence, and wholehearted business strategy. Welcome to Your Next Chapter, the podcast especially for women in their 40s and beyond who know that business and personal development go hand in hand. Tune in each week for marketing, mindset, and personal growth strategies, along with inspiring stories from women around the world who are creating new businesses and lives that are personally fulfilling and financially rewarding. If you're looking to create a business and life you love, you're in great company. Let's find out what will unfold in your next chapter. I'm your host, Angela Rasmus, and I'm so delighted that you're here. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Your Next Chapter podcast. This is Angela Rasmus, your host, and you've joined us for one of the conversations I'm having in the new series, which is Purpose, Passions, and Reinvention. And this is where I'm talking to wonderfully wholehearted women who are sharing their experiences with the curveballs and the open doors and the new windows that can come across us in our next chapters. There's stories about catastrophes, about opportunities, about life, death, and everything in between. Because so often our next chapters are built on what I call skinned knees. And sometimes that's a fabulous way of starting something new. And sometimes it's a very difficult way of starting something new. And there's all variations in between. So the lovely lady that we're talking with today is Linley Cornish, who is in Canberra, or just outside Canberra, here in Australia. Lynn and I go way back. We've known each other for quite a few years now. And I have enormous admiration for her courage, her strength, and her wisdom and insights. And as you listen to this conversation today, you'll understand why. And I'm sure you're going to feel the same way. Lynn, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, you're most welcome.
I've been looking forward to this one. We always have juicy conversations with I remember when we first met, it must be about 3 or 4 years ago now, when we were working together, and then you've been in a couple of my masterminds, and you always bring such wisdom to the table. But today is all about digging a bit deeper in that area.
Yes, thank you.
You're so welcome.
I'm feeling slightly nervous, so.
Hey, so am I, so that's okay. We'll bounce off each other. Well, the whole idea of next chapters, I mean, where we are today is very different from where we were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, even 1 year ago. So bring us up to speed. Let's have a look at some of that background. What were you doing, go back a few years? What were those original chapters like that have led you to today before we get down into the real detail? Give us a feeling for what your journey has been like through these adult years.
Well, I'm an ex-military person, so I joined the Navy when I was very young with a purpose to do my bit for world peace, having spent some of my teenage years living in Libya in North Africa. That ignited the passion and the belief in me that world peace could exist. So I joined the Navy to do my bit, and it wasn't long into the Navy where I trained working with people who have drug and alcohol or other issues that are going on in their life that can lead them down paths that they never expected. So I did that as a secondary duty for a number of years, and then I left Navy to join Defence and trained as a mediator and a coach, and worked in alternative resolutions, helping in workplace relationships for a number of years before I quit and started my own business, which is almost 15 years ago now. So I've been working for myself. That's sort of the journey of how I came to be a business owner. And when I actually left Defence, I joined a consultancy group who was basically about conflict resolution and leadership. But in the last 5 years, my life has had a number of twists and turns that have led me to the point now where I work predominantly with people who are in a trauma response or a grief response, whether it be to unexpected life circumstances, losing a job, perhaps selling their home, or in my case, it was through divorce and death of my child. That's got me to the point where I am now. So that's sort of a short précis of where I am.
It is. It's a very short précis of life. Oh, I've just wrapped up 30 or 40 years of life in just those few wee sentences. But it is. We look back on where we were, and I often talk about having the benefit of hindsight, and we can see how the steps sort of one led to the other as to where we are today. Though when we're actually treading the path, it's impossible in most instances to see where we're going to end up. But it seems like you've always got that thread that has been running through, that purposeful thread of assisting others to move through situations that are challenging. Does that feel right for me to say that?
Yes, I think it certainly, that's the thread for the intent of creating peace has been my thread, probably since I was about 15. So one of my favourite sayings is peace building one person at a time. So that sense of what peace can I bring to each person I engage with, whether it be as a client or the woman working in Woolies or some guy begging on the side of the street. So it's just that building that sense of peace.
I love that. I think that's where you and I resonate so much. I think my sense of purpose has parallels with yours, because my desire, the reason for me being, is that every person that I come across, I want them to believe a little more in themselves and their ability to do that thing. Yeah. Whatever that thing is. And like you, I think I can hear a similarity there that
absolutely.
It doesn't matter who you come across. I mean, the business context is obviously what we're talking about in a large part today, but you can see an individual who has nothing to do with your business, and you can speak and engage with them in such a way that it's in congruence with it's congruent with that intention.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not it's off. I remember reading a meme once that says, because I also take on injured animals, or have in the past, and rehabilitated them. And so saving one horse may not save the world, but it is the world to that horse. And it's the same with humans, bringing peace to one person doesn't bring peace to the world, but it brings peace to that one person. So that's enough of for me, that's my purpose.
I love that. I love that perspective. I think sometimes we can feel that the contribution that we're making is not significant enough. Yeah. I think we get exposed so often to the really big stories, and the media certainly picks up on extraordinary lives and extraordinary people. But we need to have conversations with ordinary people who are doing quietly extraordinary things.
Absolutely. And if we just focus on the big things, we actually lose the value of what we can make as an individual. And I mean, I lose that too. Sometimes and I've talked with you about, the actual comparison trap that we get hooked up into, and I see other people doing amazing things and I self-judge myself. But if I actually sit down and reflect on where I was this time 12 months ago, or where I was this time 2 years ago or 5 years ago, I've made huge changes in my life and huge movements, and made considerable difference to a number of people.
You certainly have. And that comparison trap, I truly believe, is one of the most dangerous things for us as women, us as parents, as mothers, as entrepreneurs, as individuals, whatever label you like to put there. The comparison trap is so dangerous. It certainly can then dampen our enthusiasm. It can halt us. It can stop us from moving forward. It's something that I focus on so much in my work, because I've suffered from it so much myself. So I know the inherent dangers in there. I dare say we'll uncover a little more of that as we're chatting. Yeah. but let's look at that heartland. And this is the experience that you've had as a woman and as a mother. And if I can use the description, because anyone hearing, and obviously we're going to talk about that experience now, the tragedy that you've had to move through is enormous. Is absolutely enormous. Can you speak to us about the death of Liam and what happened there, and how that has impacted you in so many different ways that perhaps you didn't expect initially?
Certainly. I think for me. So now that Liam died on the 5th of November in 2015, and so he was taking my daughter Kira to the bus stop, and it was on the way back from dropping Kira off. He was worried about being late from work, and he was going too fast around what's called a chicane bend. lost control and hit a tree. And the person who found him is a friend and neighbour of mine, and she called me. And so I actually was at the scene within 15 minutes of him being pronounced. And so I spent several hours with him while I contacted those that needed to know. And it's interesting now, at this point, reflecting on it, that I suppose it wasn't shock so much as the grief process I went into was around being busy. And people often describe and say to me how strong I was, and that's certainly not an experience I had. It's a life-saving response, doing what you know has to be done when all you want to do is curl up and die. So he died 5th November. Since then, so that was a pivotal point for me. And I remember I actually put up on your group while I was sitting in the car with Liam when I put the message up on your next chapter group to say, I won't be here today, my son was just killed, or something similar. Please hold your loved ones close, or something.
I remember it. And I remember that you and I had a call scheduled that day.
Yes.
And the email came through of what had happened. And I remember it's one of those moments that you'll never forget. And I remember running into my daughter who was homesick that day, and I don't think I've ever held my child as hard as I did that day. My heart was utterly breaking for you, as a mum, as your friend, as a woman, to have that experience. It just, it is where, so I believe so many people find it difficult to talk about these things because imagining or not wanting to imagine how it could be for you. And I think your description of people seeing you as strong, I mean, that's certainly the perception. It was certainly how I know I did, and I know many of the women who were in your mastermind circle felt as well. We were in awe of what was seen as your strength, but I understand with you describing what was actually going on for you, it was that just keeping on moving forward, that the brain, I guess, sort of took over and protected you with that busyness.
Yeah, and it is a real, I think I lived for 12 to 15 months with a hidden or a secret kernel of wishing that it was all a bad dream, and that if I believed hard enough, it wouldn't be true. So I think that whole sense of busyness was around, it was self-protection, and it was also around my own, that self-critic of, what sort of mother am I? How am I keeping my kids safe if my son was killed? All that sort of stuff. It was about really, it was just a mess. It was really, although I had things to do, they weren't done, I don't know, thoughtfully is not the right word, but they were done out of a defensive and self-care, self-survival, almost a survival process. But it's interesting now, 2.5 years down the track, not quite 2.5 years down the track, the changing in your thinking and the changing in your experience. It doesn't mean the grief's any different, but it comes to a certain point where you start to accept that perhaps death is death. There is nothing else. That it's done and dusted, and it doesn't make it okay, but there's a next phase of what does it mean when your child or when somebody you love dearly is still not coming back. So I don't think I can adequately describe it. It's just a state, but it's not a state that I exist in anymore. It's just one of my many patches on my life quilt. It's not all my quilt, and I've had to work very hard to make sure that the grief is a guide for me, not a place that I wallow, because it would be so much easier for me just to curl up and die. But I've worked very, very hard to make it to make Liam's death and my grief colourful, bright patches on my quilt of life. Yeah.
I think you've really explained it as well as anybody could, and we can feel and hear and to a very small extent know what it is that you've been experiencing, Lynn, and I understand how it's opened this door to being able to help other people who are in these traumatizing and these challenging and these incredibly confronting and sad experiences. I know you've described it as people being in a place that they didn't expect and they didn't choose.
Yeah.
Didn't expect and they didn't choose. Now, I know that you've spoken of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross.
Yes.
And her work on transformative potential of grief.
So Elizabeth Kubler-Ross is, one of the responsible for the stages of grief. And when she developed the stages of grief, my understanding it was about people who have a terminal illness or are living with a terminal illness, and how you accept that and continue to make what life you have valuable. And throughout the years, we've assumed that those stages of grief apply to bereaved grief too. So when you've lost someone, my experience is that that's not the case, that you don't just follow through stages you don't follow like she has indicated.
It's not linear. It's not linear, I guess.
It's not linear at all. It's just a mess. But one of the things that really stuck with me, because when Liam died, I needed to understand not why he died, but understand what was happening for me and my family and everybody. And so one of the things I read from that she wrote is that people who walk into their grief often have a transformative process where they then can come through with a different expectation of life and the world, and different understanding of themselves and the world. So for me, that was like an invitation into going, all right, well, I can walk into this or I can avoid it. And so then the next thing that caught my eye was the work of Dr. Russ Harris and his book called The Reality Slap, which is how to find fulfillment when life hurts. And I picked most of my books up in airports, and I picked that up and read it as I was flying. I can't remember where I was going to. And it is about basically the work it takes to live alongside painful life experiences, whatever they might be. So it's not about the passive therapy, it's about active, hard work to live alongside pain. And that appealed to me because I couldn't sit in this passively. So I studied with him and studied all of his programs and learnt as much as I'm still learning. I haven't finished learning, obviously, as much as I can about what is the process that will assist me to live alongside my grief. Because the natural cultural expectation I have discovered is people want me to be happy and forget about the grief and Liam, and not forget about Liam himself, but just put all that aside because it brings down the tone of the party, as I've been told. And I can't, as a mum, I can't do that. I can't pretend that it's like, that it's okay. I can't put aside my son. He had 19 years or almost 20 years of life. So I needed to learn how to walk alongside it. And so that's what I've been doing the last 2.5 years. And I now share with my clients, but not just clients who are going through grief, bereaved grief and deep grief, but clients who are grieving any unexpected experience or life experience or place where they are. So that's, I've forgotten your question now.
That's okay. We came full circle there. It was understanding, and this is really the heart of it. It's that and this is where I know it might seem like a trite description, but when I talk about next chapter businesses often being built on skin knees, I mean these are lacerated knees we're talking about here, my darling. one of such a deep, painful experience, and your commitment and decision to not just be, I guess, pulled along by it, but to, as you said, stand tall, to walk into it, to actually do the work. And from there, am I right in thinking that you've taken this learning that you've had from Elizabeth, from Russ, and probably from other sources as well, and transformed that into your own approach based on what you've experienced and what's helped you for you to then take on to your clients? Have you created, I guess, a process using tools and things that have been most effective for you that you are now using for your clients?
Absolutely. So I had to go back to basics, because my business prior to divorce, but prior to Liam's death, was around mediation and conflict resolution, and for me that felt like a surface dweller. And the experience of Liam dying and the depth and deep grief and the change in you physically in grief gave me momentum to dive deep. And I think I've even heard you say, rather than be the water skier, you want to be the deep sea diver.
Yeah, absolutely.
That sense of diving deep into something that I've been previously just skidding over the top of. And so I've developed processes to support clients. So on a number of tools that I've learnt through acceptance and commitment therapy, which is the Russ Harris program, the reality slap, but also various leadership tools that I use. I named Gervais Bush and the Clear Leadership, so I use some of his tools. I go back to Brené Brown and some of her learning around vulnerability and shame, because there's a huge amount of shame that comes with, for me, has come with losing my child. And then I picked up some tools and techniques from a woman named Kathleen Adams and a neurobiologist, Deborah Ross, who it's about journaling and recreating the neuroplasticity in your brain. Because my experience in grief, because my grief was sort of compounded through a divorce and various other things, and then Liam dying, was I actually ended up with a sort of like a brain injury. So a actual physical injury, which resulted in loss of memory, loss of ability to really almost string a sentence together at times. Balance, my physical balance was shocking. I couldn't get on my horse again. So I've put a number of processes together to support people when they experience the shock or the trauma of a unexpected life, to start to regain and build the plasticity of their brain through action, taking action, practice, getting things wrong, doing it again, having another go. So in doing that, you're actually learning the skills, the deep level skills of what to do when I'm experiencing grief.
It sounds, when you're talking through those tools, I guess there was some that you came across that you discarded as well along the way, that didn't resonate with you, that didn't fit your experience. And I believe this is probably at the core of the way that we can build our businesses around our purposes. Like how would you describe, or how would you articulate that you feel you're on purpose now? I know that you made that reference to I was paddling in the shallows before. I really would encourage you not to discount that, because you made a lot of very significant and positive impact on the people you took care of before these life-changing events. But I understand the desire and the need and the ability to dive so much deeper now. So how do you articulate that feeling of being on purpose? How do you know that you're on purpose doing this work?
Well, how do I know? That's a very good question. I suppose I had to look inwards to know. I had no idea what my purpose was. And I still haven't got it down in, I would say my purpose has fuzzy edges, which I'm okay with now, which I was never okay with before.
I think all of our purposes, I think, have definitely have fuzzy edges. We keep evolving, we keep changing. But I'm sorry to interrupt.
No. But I actually I had to go back and do the self-reflection type activities that all of these wonderful, wonderful researchers put together to work out what sort of human did I want to be right now. And it wasn't necessarily from now on, but right now, because when we're stuck in trauma and grief, sometimes you cannot see tomorrow. You cannot see next week. And there have been many moments when I didn't want to live by tomorrow or by next week. So the only moment I could do things with was right now. So how do I know I'm on purpose now is the fact that the moment right now is valuable. And I can appreciate being present, being here right now. So my purpose isn't necessarily just my business. My purpose is to actually continue to appreciate what's in the present and what I've got here. And then I share those skills with others. So it's interesting too, because one of the compounding grief incidences of the death of my son has been what for me has felt like the betrayal and loss of women friends who were so important to me before Liam died. There's been a number of friendships that just disappeared. I was incredibly reactive for a good 12 months, and so was a prickly and hard person to be around. So it was interesting when, now reflecting on those lost friendships, I grieved for a long time because there's nothing more isolating than losing a child. But now I know I'm on purpose because there's people that are coming into my life that are just amazing women, and I have a tribe that's forming and growing that is like none that I've ever seen before or ever experienced before. And it's a space of safety and vulnerability and creativity and tears and anger and a whole gamut of emotions, but it's a space that I can sit in. So I think that's how I know one of the ways I'm on purpose. I'm attracting and creating a world that is peaceful and safe.
So it's beautifully aligned. I love the way that you've described that, and that openness to the new tribe that's forming around you. And this is where I think that power of vulnerability. You know what a deep Brené Brown fan I am. I fangirl over her all the time. I'm rereading her original book. I thought it was just me, but it isn't at the moment. And that power of vulnerability is so beautifully displayed by the way that you share on social media, the way that you craft your newsletters, the way that you are so open with what has been happening, the feelings, giving people permission to express exactly what's going on in the present, unapologetically. I think that is such a service that you do. And this to me is such the heart of a next chapter business. Because this stuff is important. This stuff means so much to you. And as we were saying at the beginning of this conversation, that if we can make a difference for just one person, then we're on purpose. I mean, the feeling of fulfillment, I think, guides us as well. Just that feeling that what I'm doing has value and usefulness. I don't care about the rest of the world or how the world judges it. Right now, in this moment, I'm anchored in that value. And I hear that. I hear that when you speak, and because you have done very much that work to get you to the place where you are now. So I think it's really fair to say that our businesses will grow and flourish around us when we are on that purpose. There's no schedule, there's no timetable how they're going to grow, but that feeling that you've got of moving in the right direction feels like the biggest signpost to me.
Yeah, and the word you use, unapologetic, I think that's been a big revelation for me, because I spent a lot of time because I was a single mum, and I got the mortgage of the farm and all that sort of stuff in the divorce, and so I had this high expectation that I'd earn, tens of thousands of dollars, and spent a whole time self-critical and self-judging and self-blaming because I wasn't hitting that mark. And then I had to go back and go, and that was just that comparison trap thing, and go, well, so let me describe. I got hooked up in the cultural phenomenon of wanting to have everything, wanting to, find. I couldn't actually decide where I was going because I felt like I needed to acquire everything, have the best of everything, and have everything in my life. So, like, be the best coach, the best consultant, the best, ex-wife, the best whatever. And I got hooked up in that and lost in not being able to actually commit and be present in anything. And that's one of the things that Liam's death has really brought to me, is that ability to go, I'm unapologetic about the fact that I'm not making the millions, that I'm not attending things, that my house isn't perfectly clean, that I only wash once a week, that I don't clean the horse stables every day, that some days I don't want to get out of bed because there's other things that I'm achieving. So I don't have to be all to everybody. I just am present to what's important and keep moving that way. Does that make sense?
You know how much it does? I am remembering your logo, which says courage, curiosity, and choice.
Yeah.
You've just articulated that third point of your overall intention and approach, is that you can make the choices now that honour you. Yeah. And we don't have to make those choices perfectly. God knows I've certainly made many choices that I had great intentions for where they were going to take me, but it didn't quite work out that way. And that having that courage, as again, coming back to the key words that you use, having that courage to recognise this isn't working, even though I thought it should, or even though I thought I wanted it, I actually don't. So let's get curious about what is possible, what does feel right. And I love how you have brought your focus in. I think, again, that concept of the water, jumping across the top of the water versus being a deep diver. We can't deep dive on 20 different things. It's just not possible.
No, you can't.
Just not possible.
No. And it's energy draining to try and do everything. It's just ineffectual. And if I come back to what do I want, so my son died, my daughter's alive. What do I want her to live and learn through this experience? And how do I want her to be as a woman? So there's some of the social niceties that we just, we don't accept every invitation. We don't go to everything. We do what we need. We come back to our personal needs rather than looking for affirmation external to us. We actually come back to internal. And it's, so my whole sense of being true to myself first, and everything I do with my clients, I have done with myself. So I'm not actually expecting other people to do anything that I don't do now. I'm also not expecting them to get it perfect, because I don't get it perfect. But I expect them to put the effort in, have a go and fail, and get up and try again, and have a go and fail, and get up and try again. So that's basically the way that I've evolved, if you like. I've grown. Is my business is permitting people to get it wrong.
And I think as this conversation we're having on this time comes full circle, that's a beautiful message to reinforce to everyone who's listening to this podcast episode right now, is that that's exactly what happens. We try, we fall down, we get up, we try again. Sometimes we try and it works beautifully and it flows, but it's the courage to keep trying and to align ourselves with, as you so beautifully described it, you make the choices now that are for your personal good. Obviously we make great choices and assist our clients as well, but for me, for our businesses to be sustainable and fulfilling, they need to serve us just as much as they serve their clients, our clients. That's when we're in our sweetest spot, when we are doing work that matters, that work that has a deep connection to, what's going on inside of us. That's what next chapters are all about. Lynn, this has been, as I knew it would be, this has been a really, really valuable conversation for you to be able to share how one of the experiences of your life that has coloured everything has opened the door to you be able to share that learning and that knowledge with others, that they can navigate with your help, their own grief, their own trauma, their own situations that they didn't expect to find themselves in, is just a really inspiring story to hear. And, if you were thinking of those ladies who are listening right now, who are standing on the edge of a next chapter and thinking, can I be vulnerable? Can I actually take my message, the things that I think are important, my learned experience, into the world and actually create a business that is linked to my purpose? How would you encourage them to do that? What might you say?
I think every story is worth telling and every story is worth hearing. And so share your story. It doesn't have to be eloquent, doesn't have to be in the right format, doesn't have to be, just share your story. There'll be people who are out there who will pick up the jewels and the value in it. And don't be distracted by perfection, because the best clients I've gotten and the most worthwhile work I've got are from people who have watched me get it wrong, and people who have watched me struggle. And I've been working with them for a long time now. So don't be distracted by it having to be all right. Just get out there and get dirty. Have a go.
Yeah, roll the sleeves up, give it a go. I totally agree. And I almost guarantee that when you're out there doing that, your tribe will begin to gather around you just like it has for you, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
That's wonderful. Now, Lynn, we were going to put on the podcast page, we will have the links to those different resources that you talked about from Elizabeth, from Brené, from Russ, etc. But how do we find you? Where's the easiest place to connect with you in this big wide world?
Probably on my website, which is just linleycornish.com.
Perfect. I'll make sure I pop that link in as well. And thank you so much for your time. I really appreciated the call with you.
Thank you. It's wonderful to talk.
And my lovely listener, I hope that you have paused and really let the message of what Lynn's been sharing today get into your heart as well, because everyone has a story and every story is worth hearing. And this is what I truly believe about Next Chapters, is that we can look back and we can connect the dots. We can find the thing that we really are here to share. Now, I don't want you to get all tied up in knots over this purpose stuff, right? Because your business is not your purpose. Your purpose is not your business. It's not that black and white. Your purpose is perhaps explored in your business, it's reflected in your business, but there are so many facets to you. That's not the be all and end all. But that idea of what resonates with you, what feels good, what you feel compelled to talk about, pretty good indications of purpose pebbles, shall we call it, right in there. And actually for this podcast series, I've created a resource that I feel will be really helpful for you. It's about uncovering, not discovering, but uncovering that purpose that's inside of you. It asks a lot of questions that, as journaling prompts, will help you begin to see what's going to unfold in your next chapter. Now, I'll put the link on the page if you go to my website and go to the podcast, but you can also grab it here. You can simply go to angelarasmus.com/purpose, and you'll come to a page where you can opt in and download that resource. So this is just one of the interviews with those amazingly wholehearted women that are a part of this Purpose, Passions and Reinventions podcast series. I hope you're enjoying them. I'd love you to share the podcast episodes and series if there's another next chapter woman that you feel would benefit from hearing these insights. I appreciate your time. I'm delighted you're a part of my community, and best wishes for you to have a wonderful day. I'll be back again really soon with the next episode. Take care. Thanks for listening to the Your Next Chapter podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please let me know. Pop over to angelaraspas.com to subscribe to the show and leave a review. And whilst you're there, you can also enjoy valuable free resources, including show notes and downloads, along with the Next Chapter community, where you can connect with other wholehearted women on the same journey as you. We'd love to welcome and support you as your next chapter unfolds. See you next time.